Namaste dear children, I am Rekha. Welcome to my channel Rekha's Knowledge Hub. Today we will see NCERT Class 6 Social Science Chapter 4 Timeline and Sources of History Part 2. What are the sources of history? Source of history: a place, person, text or an object from which we gather information about some past event or period. They are called sources of history. So, sources of history are materials that historians use to study and reconstruct the past. They provide evidence of historical events, people, places, and ideas. Let us explore. Can you collect information about at least 3 generations of your family on your mother's and father's sides? Create a family tree with your parents, grandparents, and great grandparents. Find out their names, what they did for a living, and where they were born. Also, write the sources from where you got this information. That you can do. See, a table is given. You can fill up this table. See, relation: grandparents, paternal. That is your father's parents. Then grandparents, maternal. That is your mother's parents. Then great grandparents, paternal. Great grandparents, maternal. Then you have to collect their names, occupations, place of birth, and then you have to write the source of information where you got the correct information. How did you find details about your family's past? Did you rely on things like photographs, diaries, ID cards, or memories from your parents and relatives? So you might have got information about your family's past from photographs, diaries, ID cards, or memories from your parents and relatives. Have you ever seen old coins, books, clothes, jewelry, or utensils in and around your house? What type of information can we gain from such objects or from old houses or buildings? So you will get many information about past from old objects, old houses, buildings, etc. Every object or structure tells a story and is like a piece in a jigsaw puzzle. The objects that you see around your house convey something of the history of your family. You may get lot of information about your family, about the history of your family from the objects that you see around your house. Similarly, we can put together historical events through a variety of sources. But keep in mind that in the case of history, quite a few pieces of puzzle may remain missing. That is, history is like a puzzle with many pieces that need to be fitted together to form a complete picture. It is quite common for some pieces to remain missing, leaving gaps in our understanding. Certain pieces might be missing because of lost or destroyed sources. Lost or destroyed sources means they might be destroyed over time due to various reasons, including natural disasters, wars, etc. Then sometimes there will be lack of evidence, then lack of interpretation, etc. Observe the figure at the bottom of the page. It brings together the main sources of history. You do not need to remember them all now. We will use some of them as we go along. Sources of history. There are different sources of history. We have oral sources, Indian literature, then foreign accounts, artistic sources, archaeological sources, inscriptions, etc. What do you mean by inscriptions? Inscriptions are writings or carvings that can be found on a variety of materials including stone, metal, wood and pottery. Then we can find inscriptions on copper plates, coins, then manuscripts, etc. What do you mean by manuscript? Manuscript refers to a handwritten or typed document. They were the primary form of written communication before the invention of printing. Then oral sources, we have genealogical oral sources, then folklore sources. What do you mean by genealogical oral sources? They are valuable tools for tracing family history. They include oral stories, for example, interviews with the family members or other individuals who have very good knowledge of a family's history. Then we have folklore oral sources. They are traditional stories, legends, and beliefs that are passed down through generations orally. Then we have archaeological sources like structures, excavations, etc. Structures include monuments and mounds. Then what are monuments? Monuments are typically large structures or statues that are built to commemorate a person, event, or idea. They are called monuments. Then what are called mounds? Mounds are large artificial hills that are often created by the accumulation of soil, debris, or other materials. They can be formed naturally through erosion or sedimentation, but they are often associated with the human activity. Then what are excavations? Excavations are a process of carefully digging up and examining archaeological sites to reveal artifacts, structures, and other evidence of human past activity. There are different findings of excavations: human, animal, and plant remains, tools and weapons, figurines and ornaments, pottery and toys, habitations and burials. These are the different findings of excavations. What are called figurines? Figurines are small three-dimensional representations of people, animals, etc. They can be made from a variety of materials including clay, stone, metal, wood, plastic, etc. They are called figurines. Then what are called habitations? Habitations refer to the places where people lived, such as houses, huts, or villages. Then burials refer to the ways in which people disposed of their dead. Then we have artistic sources. We have artistic sources like paintings, sculptures, panels, etc. Sculpture is the art of creating three-dimensional forms like statues made from a variety of materials like stone, metal, wood, etc. Then panels. Panels refer to the flat, rectangular surfaces that are used to support a painting or other artwork. They are called panels. Then we have some learning sources or literature sources like Indian literature, then foreign accounts, etc. Indian literature includes Vedas and Idihasas, then poems and plays, historical text, collection of stories, then scientific and technological text, etc. Vedas include Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajurveda, and Atharva Veda. Then Idihasas, our Ramayana, Mahabharata, they are Idihasas. Then we have foreign accounts like travelogues, then historical chronicles, etc. Historical chronicles are written accounts of historical events. They are often arranged in chronological order. These are the different sources of history. When historians study, say, a king or queen of 1500 years ago, an ancient monument, a war, or some items of trade, they take care to gather information from as many sources as they can find and consult. So when historians study about past, they take care to collect information from as many sources as possible. Sometimes the sources confirm each other, that is, the jigsaw pieces match. At other times, sources may give contradictory information. The jigsaw pieces don't match, in which case they need to decide which source they can trust more. That is how they try to recreate the history of the period they are studying. So, historians collect information from so many sources. Sometimes the sources confirm each other. That means they provide consistent information on a particular topic or event. But sometimes the sources may give contradictory information. Contradictory information refers to the information that is inconsistent or in opposition to each other. In such cases, the historians, they have to find which source they can trust more. That is how they try to recreate the history of the period they are studying. Who contributes to all these sources of history? Historians themselves, but also archaeologists, epigraphists who study ancient inscriptions, anthropologists who study human societies and their cultures, experts in literature and languages, and some more. So these people contribute to the sources of history. Historians, who are historians? Historians are scholars who study the past. Then archaeologists are scientists who study the past through the examination of material remains. Then epigraphists who study ancient inscriptions. Then anthropologists who study human societies and their cultures. Experts in literature and languages, they all contribute to the sources of history. In addition, in the last 50 years or so, scientific studies have been contributing more and more to the reconstruction of the past. So, scientific studies helped to reconstruct the past. For example, studies of ancient climates, chemical studies of excavated materials, and studies of the genetics of ancient people have provided fresh insights which supplement the more usual sources. So, studies of ancient climates, then chemical studies of excavated materials, then studies of the genetics of ancient people, they all contribute to the sources of history. What do you mean by genetics? The branch of biology that studies how in plants, animals or humans, certain features and characteristics get passed down from one generation to the next. This is called the genetics. So, genetics is the study of heredity or the passing of traits from one generation to the next. It is a branch of biology that deals with the structure, function and transmission of genes, which are the units of hereditary information. And when historians study recent history, which usually means the last 2 or 3 centuries, another source is newspapers. For the last few decades, electronic media, television, the internet, etc. also can be consulted. So newspapers, then electronic media like television, internet, etc. are also sources of history. The beginnings of human history. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, have walked the planet for about 3 lakh years. This appears to be a very long time, yet it is only a tiny fraction of the Earth's history. Let us have a quick look at our early history. So, modern humans called Homo sapiens, they have walked the planet Earth for about 3 lakh years. This appears to be a very long time, but it is only a tiny fraction of the Earth's history. See, in this picture, we can see a rock shelter. We can see many activities of early humans in that rock shelter. See, some people, they were making tools and some people, they were removing skin of dead animal to make clothes, etc. Then some people, they were using fire. Then some people were painting. So we can see many activities of early humans in this rock shelter. Early humans faced many challenges from nature and lived in bands or groups to help each other. So early humans, they faced many challenges from nature. They lived in groups. They helped each other. They were constantly seeking shelter and food and were mainly hunters and gatherers. This means that they relied on hunting and collecting edible plants and fruits for their survival. So early humans, they were constantly seeking shelter and food to survive. They were mainly hunters and gatherers. They were hunting wild animals and were collecting edible plants and fruits for their survival. Our early ancestors also had certain beliefs about the natural elements and possibly also some notion of afterlife. What do you mean by afterlife? A life that begins after death. So our early ancestors had certain beliefs about natural elements like sun, moon, stars, earth, water, fire, etc. And they also believed on life after death. These groups lived in temporary camps, rock shelters, or caves and communicated with each other using languages that are now lost. So our early ancestors, they lived in temporary camps, then rock shelters or caves, and they communicated with each other using some languages that are now lost. They used fire and started making objects that made their lives easier, like improved stone axes and blades, arrowheads, and other tools. They invented fire and they used improved stone axes, blades, arrowheads, and other tools. Aspects of their life are visible in rock paintings found in hundreds of caves all over the world. Some of those paintings depict simple figures or a few symbols. Others are more detailed and represent scenes with animals or humans. So many paintings were also found, and some paintings were very simple paintings with a few figures or a few symbols, but some paintings were more detailed. They contained other animals, humans, etc. In time, these early humans learned to make simple ornaments such as stone or shell beads, pendants made of animal teeth, and sometimes exchanged them with other groups. And they also learned to make simple ornaments like stone or shell beads, then pendants made of animal teeth, and they also exchanged these items with the other groups. The first crops. Over long ages, the Earth's climate has gone through many changes. At certain times, it was very cold and much of the Earth was covered with ice. This is called an ice age. So, the climate of Earth has gone through many changes over long ages. At certain times, it was very cold and much of the Earth was covered with ice. And that age is called the ice age, as you will learn in greater detail in science. Later, when the climate warmed up, this ice partly melted and the resulting waters swelled the existing rivers and eventually drained into oceans. The last ice age lasted from over 1 lakh years ago to around 12,000 years ago. So at certain times it was very cold and much of the earth was covered with the ice, called ice age. Later, the climate warmed up and the ice partly melted, and the resulting waters, they swelled the existing rivers and they eventually drained into oceans. And the last ice age lasted from over 1 lakh years ago to around 12,000 years ago. Afterwards, living conditions improved for humans. In many parts of the world, they started settling down and cultivating cereals and grains. They also domesticated animals such as cattle, goats, etc. With more food available, these communities grew in size and number and often settled down near rivers. This was not only because of the availability of water, but also because the soil would be more fertile there. It made the process of growing crops easier. So then the living conditions of humans improved a lot. They started settling down and cultivating cereals and grains. They also domesticated animals like cattle, goats, etc. So with more food available, these communities, they grew in size and number. They often settle down near rivers. Why? Because of the availability of water. Not only because of the availability of water, but also because the soil would be more fertile near river banks. So it made the process of growing crops easier. Observe the scene on the next page. It depicts an agricultural community from a few millenniums ago. List the main activities you can identify. So you can see some activities here. See some people, they are rearing cattle like goats. Then some people, they are cooking food. Then some people are cultivating grains. You can see so many activities in this picture. Both in this earlier picture of a rock shelter and in this one, men and women are given certain roles. While they may appear to be natural, they are not necessarily correct and do not cover all situations. For instance, in a rock shelter, women may have helped prepare colors for painting the rock or may have done some of the painting. In both scenes, men may have done some of the cooking or may have helped take care of children. That is, by seeing a picture, we cannot predict that that particular work is done by women that day or that particular work was done by men that day. Sometimes these works might be done by both men and women. Keeping in mind that we have only limited information, think about such roles and situations and discuss in class. As communities grew, so did their social complexity. Leaders or chieftains were responsible for the well-being of the people, and everyone collectively worked towards the community's welfare. For example, there was no sense of individual ownership. The lands were collectively sowed and harvested. So, as time passed, some leaders or chieftains were responsible for the well-being of the people, and everyone, they collectively work towards the community's welfare. Welfare means health, prosperity and well-being. So everyone collectively work towards the health, prosperity and well-being of the community. For example, there was no sense of individual ownership. The lands were collectively sowed and harvested. There was no individual ownership. The lands were collectively sowed and harvested. As time went by, hamlets grew into sizable villages that exchanged goods, mostly food, clothing, and tools. Slowly, networks of communication and exchange were established among those villages, and some of them grew into small towns. So, as time went by, hamlets grew into sizable villages. What is a hamlet? A hamlet is a small settlement or small village. These small villages, they grew into sizable villages and they started exchanging goods, mostly food, clothing, tools, etc. Then slowly networks of communication and exchange were established among those villages, and some of them grew into small towns. These small villages, they grew into small towns. New technologies appeared. For example, pottery for making pots and other clay objects, and the use of metal, copper first, iron later, which helped make durable tools, objects of daily use and ornaments. So new technology is also developed. For example, pottery for making pots and other clay objects. Then they use metals. First they used copper, then they used iron to make durable tools, objects of daily use and ornaments. We will see in chapter 6 how the stage prepared for the emergence of what is called civilization. For now, it is important to remember that this early progress of humanity had to face many challenges. At some critical times, humanity could have almost disappeared, as some earlier species did. We will never know those early humans to whose courage and persistence we owe our existence today. So, this stage prepared for the emergence of civilization. Civilization is a complex society that has developed a culture, technology, and social organization. Then, throughout human history, there have been several instances where humanity faced existential threats that could have led to near extinction. Some of these events include volcanic eruptions, ice ages, disease outbreaks, nuclear war, climate change, etc. Now we will see the summary of this chapter. We have explored some ways to learn more about our past. The concepts of a timeline helps us understand the sequence of historical events at different times. There are different ways of measuring time, years, decades, centuries, millenniums, etc. Sources of history are many. They help us reconstruct and interpret historical events. We have also had a brief look into the lives of early humans and how human societies grew more complex in time. Next, we have questions, activities, and projects. First one, as a project, write the history of your family or village if you live in one, using sources of history at your disposal. Ask your teacher to guide you. This one you can do. You can write the history of your family, about your parents, grandparents, then great grandparents, about their occupations. Also write their names, then place of birth, etc. Then also you write about the source from where you got this information. Next one, can we compare historians to detectives? Give reasons for your answers. Yes, we can compare historians to detectives. Historians and detectives can be compared because both professions use what? Evidence to understand the past. Historians collect documents, artifacts, and other sources, while detectives, they collect clues. Historians analyze sources to understand historical context, while detectives analyze evidence to solve crimes. So, they can be compared. Both historians and detectives, they can be compared. Then we have a few exercises with the dates. We will see one by one. Place these dates chronologically on the timeline. 323 CE, 323 BCE, 100 CE, 100 BCE, 1900 BCE, 1090 CE, 2024 CE. So, we have to arrange these dates on a timeline chronologically. So, first we will construct a timeline. See, then place 100 CE here. Here 100 CE. Then before 100 CE, we have 100 BCE. Then before that 323 BCE. Then 1900 BCE. Then after 100 CE, we have 323 CE, then 1090 CE, then 2024 CE. So, this way we can arrange the dates chronologically. If King Chandragupta was born in 320 CE, which century did he belong to and how many years was that after the Buddha's birth? So, Chandragupta was born in 320 CE. So, he was born in 4th century CE. 4th century was the time period from 301 CE to 400 CE. And how many years was that after Buddha's birth? Buddha's birth in 560 BCE. So, how many years after Buddha's birth? 560 plus 320 minus 1. That is 880 minus 1 equal to 879 years. Rani of Jhansi was born in 1828. Which century did she belong to? How many years was that before India's independence? So, Rani of Jhansi was born in 1828. So, which century she belonged to? She belonged to 19th century. Why? Because 19th century was a time period from 1801 CE to 1900 CE. So, Rani of Jhansi belonged to 19th century because she was born in 1828. Then how many years was that before India's independence? India got independence in 1947. So, number of years before independence is equal to 1947 minus 1828. That is 119 years. Here there is no need to add 2 years and subtract 1 because here both years 1828 and 1947 both are in CE. If one year is in BCE and the other is in CE, then we have to add and subtract 1. Turn 12,000 years ago into a date. Present year is 2024 CE. From 1 CE to 2024 CE, how many years are there? 2024 years. So the number of years left is equal to 12,000 minus 2024, that is 9,976. So 12,000 years ago will be 9,976 B.C.E. Children, thanks for watching. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. We will see in the next video. Thank you.